Good evening and welcome, everyone. On behalf of Save the Yellowstone Grizzly, we're honored to have you with us for the online premiere of Return of the Grizzly. My name is Dan Sullivan. I'm a board member and treasurer of Save the Yellowstone Grizzly and one of the executive producers of this film. On this Earth Day Eve, we come together to honor one of North America's most iconic and often misunderstood animals, the grizzly bear. Recent images from the Artemis program remind us just how rare and fragile our planet truly is. In the northern Rockies, spring is arriving. The snow is melting and grizzlies are emerging from hibernation, stepping back out onto the landscape, beginning the search for food, for connection, for survival. Today, the grizzly bear remains listed as a threatened species under the Endangered Species Act. But those protections are under pressure. There are ongoing efforts to weaken the act, remove federal protections, and allow trophy hunting of grizzlies in the lower 48. In January 2025, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service released a proposed rule to revise protections for grizzly bears. The rule stems directly from legal action taken by Save the Yellowstone Grizzly following the killing of 3 grizzlies near Teutonia, Idaho in November 2022. As a result of that case, the agency is now under a court-supervised obligation to revise its approach using the best available science. The current deadline for that decision is December 18th, 2026. In the meantime, the grizzly continues to face mounting challenges. There are efforts in Congress to delist the bear outright, bypassing science altogether. And climate change is already reshaping the landscape. This past winter, Montana experienced one of the warmest on record. When spring comes early and a hard freeze follows, critical food sources can fail. And when that happens, bears are pushed further across the landscape into new territory and often into conflict. In 2025, a record 72 grizzlies were killed in the Yellowstone ecosystem, most due to human causes. Recently, a new report stated that a grizzly is worth over $4 million. Save the Yellowstone Grizzly is a nonprofit dedicated to protecting grizzly bears and the wild ecosystems they depend on. We work in the courts, in communities, and across the landscape to ensure that the grizzly has a future in the lower 48. In celebration of our 10th anniversary, we're asking you to take action tonight. You can text GRIZ, G-R-I-Z, to 6686 to sign up for our newsletter. That is GRIZ, G-R-I-Z, to 66866. We encourage you to sign our petition, change.org. Protect the grizzly, defend the Endangered Species Act, stop trophy hunts. You can explore our Grizz Abides merchandise and make a donation at savethegrizz.org. We also want to thank our co-hosts and partners, Jeff Bridges, Bill Payne, Patagonia, Big Sky Wildlife, Irestone Web Design, Montana Sierra Club, musicians Saving Our Home Planet, Sierra Club, Wild Earth Guardians, Wilderness Watch, and Yak Valley Forest Council. Now we're honored to hear a few words from our special guest, Bill Payne. Bill is the keyboardist for the band Little Feat, and he generously scored our films with his beautiful music. Be sure to check out the new Little Feat documentary as well as his forthcoming memoir, Carnival Ghosts, Memoir of Life, Loss, and Rebirth with Little Feat. You can also catch him on tour this summer. Here's Bill.
Hi, it's Bill Payne from Little Feat. I'm proud to be a part of something that's called The Return of the Grizzly. It's a documentary, and it's going to be publicly released very soon. I was fortunate enough to do the music for it, and Jeff Bridges did the narration. I live in Montana, and the issue of grizzlies is important to me, and it should be to you as well. It's about our ecosystem. It's about the threatening by the government to delist once again the grizzlies, take them off the endangered species list. They're saying the grizzly has recovered. Dan Sullivan, who's a writer and a producer for the film, says there's no such thing as true recovery. You know, what really happens here is it boils down to a philosophy of connectivity, tolerance, and coexistence. That's what we need. And for more information on this, please visit savethegrizz.org. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, now the film. Return of the Grizzly is a 37-minute documentary that explores one of the most important questions of our time. Can humans and grizzlies coexist in a rapidly changing world? The film follows the journeys of explorer bears, young grizzlies pushing beyond isolated populations, searching for new habitat and reconnecting fragmented ecosystems. The film is narrated by Jeff Bridges and scored by Bill Payne. We'll be hosting a live Q&A immediately after the film with director Michael Middleton. So please drop your questions in the comments on Facebook or YouTube. Everyone who leaves a comment on Save the Olson Grizzly Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube during the live stream will be entered to win a Grizzlies teddy bear. This little rascal right here. It's got the Grizzlies t-shirt and all. Okay, we'll announce a winner tomorrow morning, so be sure to drop a comment and join the conversation. Enjoy the film.
A long time ago, Coyote, he told Grizzly Bear that the human beings were coming and that we were going to share his home with them. Grizzly Bear was angry. He came across a young boy who was lost. Grizzly Bear was amazed and intrigued by the young boy. So he took him and he showed him how to live on the land. He showed him the roots, the berries, the plants. He showed him how to mark the trail to buffalo country for the Nez Perces. So he showed us a lot of how to live when we first began to populate our homeland. For those reasons, we really have a strong affinity to the grizzly bear and wished that he would come home to us. It's unfortunate that Grizzly Bear has to prove his worth on the land. I hope that the people can understand that they can take action, they can let their voices be known, to step forward and say that they want grizzlies and wolves on the landscape to help care for the land, to help give something for the generations to come.
The fate of the grizzly bear is in our hands. If the grizzly is to survive, we need to learn to live together. This challenge has been accepted by those of us who believe that there is ever more to be learned from the wild. Friends Doug Peacock and Michael Hausman understand this may be our last best chance.
I was there living alone back in the woods of Yellowstone long enough to realize that the bears themselves were having trouble. They were the lowest their population had ever been. And that's when somebody gave me an old 16-millimeter movie camera, and I decided I was going to assemble kind of an ethnographic film of the surviving grizzlies.
What attracted you to grizzly bears, having been a combat veteran?
Well, first of all, the Tet Offensive burned me out. I saw hundreds and hundreds of dead children. So when I got back here, I was no good around people. I couldn't even go see my parents. The only place I wanted to be was where I've always been comfortable, and that's the wilderness. I kept a little map in Vietnam. It's just a little road map of the Northern Rockies, and I'd look at it every night and look at the blank spots on the map. Said, if I ever get out of here, I'm going to go there. And that's what I did. And I came down with a malaria attack and ended up in Yellowstone in the middle of a hallucinatory, what they call a paroxysm of malaria with a high temperature. I thought I was imagining grizzly bears. Turned out they were real. And there I was. And I never got over it. Never got over it. They allowed me to externalize my own darker thoughts and experiences, and connect in a real way with the world again.
Part of keeping the wilderness as you knew it is to protect the grizzlies, and that's what we got to do. Now we have a friendship about buffalo.
We sure do.
I have this house in Montana for 40 years. I decided to return the buffalo who were here way before we were.
Way before.
And then you, on your side, decided to return the grizzlies. In contrast to a lot of my neighbors who don't understand the role of the grizzly in American history, would track one down and probably try and shoot it, and they have. I'm perfectly happy having them live in coexistence, and if on occasion something would happen to one of my buffalo, I can understand.
This is not a rational hatred. I think that modern humans fear what they don't know, and increasingly we know nothing of the lives of wild, rare animals like wolves and jaguars and bison. And the more you know about a creature, the less you fear it, because what we fear, we really do hate.
You told me that the grizzlies, they move. They have to find a new place to go. So we have to let that happen.
Until we reconnect that isolated ecosystem with grizzly bears up here, you know, they don't have a chance of long-time survival. They will go extinct.
We are at a time where every question needs to be opened and turned inside out. We don't know what our future will be. We know what our past is. We know that bears have walked alongside humans from the beginning. So why would we risk that? Why not err on precaution rather than arrogance? And the delisting the grizzly feels like an act of arrogance.
The intent of the law is to preserve our precious wilderness forever, protected by the presence of grizzlies, wolves, and buffalo. Removing the grizzlies from the endangered species list means trophy hunting. In other words, we have saved them in order to kill them.
Doctor, thank you for appearing today. Grizzly bears, you testified to, once roamed in huge numbers across the western United States, certainly in my home state of Colorado, but due to hunting and habitat destruction, they've been completely wiped out. In all of the lower 48 states, there are only roughly 1,500 grizzly bears left. In your expert scientific opinion, are those numbers high enough to remove protections for the grizzly bear?
My opinion would be, backed by the science, is that grizzly bears exist in less than 3% of their original numbers. And if grizzlies are to survive as a species, genetically, there has to be connectedness between the populations of bears.
Thank you, Doctor, and I would certainly agree with you. My understanding that British Columbia, just by way of example, has 20 times as many grizzlies as the state of Wyoming. And British Columbia, just last year, I believe, decided to end the practice of trophy hunting.
If you can believe it, within 2 days of seeing my first grizzly bear, I was mauled almost to death. For some reason, I decided I'd continue on with bears. The term explorer bear, I believe I invented it, but I was trying to get the idea that bears that leave a population of bears and sometimes go long distances are exploring for new territory for themselves. So I think what we're seeing with the explorer bear is an attempt to find new habitat, partly because they're food stressed. They're not successful at finding food. They haven't even got a territory where they can learn all the postal routes to get the seasonal foods. They're the ones that get into cat food and bird feeders and horse chow and all these sorts of things, or garbage that people leave out. So the message there for people in wild country, especially in places like Montana, we have to secure our garbage and any foods. You've got to adjust your behavior to fit the local environment. We have to come up with some management initiatives that look after those explorer deers because they're very important genetically and for other reasons, because they're the ones that are going to connect our disparate populations that we have now and fill in the wilderness in other areas. I mean, that's the most positive thing you can do. Protected habitat and having a decent, humane attitude toward our wilderness symbol, the grizzly bear.
What about the adventurous bears who wander out? How do you make an asset out of the bear that leaves the park and goes someplace else? Why should that bear be acutely endangered from being put to death by various forces outside of the park? Without grizzly bears, the entire region becomes a different place. It would be a sign that the Northern Rockies was not the wild place it used to be. If you could face the idea of killing grizzlies or removing grizzlies, I think that would have a sort of a cascade for every other wild thing. It would say something about the place itself to lose any of these iconic animals. It's not a world that I'd really want to live in very much. If we were missing sandhill cranes or if we were missing goshawks, all these kinds of things that seem to stand for the place because they've co-evolved for such a long time. And the idea that we had the capacity to sort of terminate their presence would say something about us as a sort of suicidal people.
Millie gambled bringing her cubs through the brightening world towards a house on the edge of the woods. There she found a garden of ursine delights, with elk hides hung out to dry and overstuffed garbage cans. Millie turned to the work of feeding, eating all that she could. Engrossed, she did not notice the house's screen door opening. She did not see the long barrel of a 12-gauge shotgun in the dim light.
Millie ended up in the field, and she ended up having to be put down because of getting into conflict with people and being shot in the face with a shotgun. It's so easy to look at population numbers or look at, this idea of range expansion, right? Bears returning to places where they've been absent for a while. Every bear that shows up on a trail camera, every bear that you see at the edge of the forest, as the night's coming up, that bear has essentially performed a series of heroic feats to stay alive until the moment when you see it or encounter it. And that, for me, is what Millie's story really makes clear. She knew where every single crop, wild or domestic, was ripening, and she moved through the Mission Valley with a stealth and a grace that is truly awe-inspiring. And she avoided so many of the temptations that were there, chickens that were left out, garbage that's unsecured, all that stuff. And yet she came to a bad end because she finally ran afoul of somebody who had no patience for bears. But where we are today, we're standing on Thunder Road Farm. We raise cattle and raspberries. We're doing agriculture at a small or medium scale, but we're doing it next to a truly wild place. We do several things that could cause problems with bears. We keep chickens for our own eggs, and we grow fruit. We protect all of those things with electric fence, and we maintain that electric fence, and we make sure that it's really hot and that it's designed to the best practices as we understand them for deterring bears. We also secure our garbage. We use a bear-resistant bin, and we're just generally watchful in terms of how and where we're grazing our animals. And so far, that's worked really well for us. But I think overall, we have a chance to do something truly amazing here in terms of remembering, right? Not discovering, but remembering and relearning how to share this landscape.
Protecting the grizzly is going to take more effort than ever. Solutions to save wildlife and wild places are advancing right under our noses. Working Dogs for Conservation is an international group with grassroots ties. They are training rescue dogs to get the science that we need in the field as grizzlies navigate the wild land and urban interface.
This organization was founded because they wanted to develop techniques that would make it easier to determine populations in a less invasive way. So we don't have to actually touch the animal to get the results that we're looking for. We're doing two things. We're trying to find scat along critical crossings so that we can determine how many bears are crossing in the specific areas to reduce highway collision. The other project we're working on is determining population sizes in Missoula, so more urban. And one of the biggest issues with bears being killed is human conflicts.
I'm very excited about working dogs for conservation and the ability for the dogs to detect bear scats. If we could go into, let's say, an important wildlife linkage zone, and we're needing to acquire data on the number of bears crossing between point A and point B, I could walk that whole stretch and maybe find 2 or 3 scats. The dogs could find 10 times that amount. It might surprise us. It might be some stretch we don't think is even a good linkage zone. But if the bears are using it, then that's what we should serve, is that site. If we don't have grizzly bears in Montana in 40 years, and we haven't figured out a way to connect all of the little island Forest Service mountain range areas, it's going to be a sad day to me. You know, we don't want to see these species blink out in the lower 48 like grizzly bears, fishers, wolverines. It means we aren't doing our job caretaking for the land. We've got this beautiful network of national forests, BLM lands, federal lands. If we can just connect them up between some of these island populations, we can have a solid ecosystem of native animals in Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. The change I've been seeing the last 2 years is blowing me away. I'm really concerned that if we don't get some of these linkage zones protected and in place and get these corridor overpasses, underpasses put in, we'll miss that avenue of time. Things are changing fast and humans aren't going away. And more of them seem to be wanting to come out here to the good country, the West, and it's getting eaten up fast. My big dream is that I'll have younger people come behind me to keep doing what can be done and what needs to be done for grizzlies and everything, really.
We're an all-inclusive fly fishing lodge. We've always had just this standard dumpster out here for our trash, and then for a number of years we kept having issues with bears being able to get into the trash. We tried to handle it on our own through a number of different means, and ultimately they could just get in. I reached out to Blake and a whole team of people to help us build this enclosure and take the steps necessary to keep bears out of our trash and keep our team safe and our guests safe, and as well as be stewards for the land.
We really designated a lot of areas that were hot spots for conflict, and this being such an important wildlife connectivity corridor, this was high up on the list, and then meeting a property owner who was willing to engage in the process and do, you know, the right type of solution. This is how we got here. I love the thought that if bears are thriving in an area, then the area is thriving in general, and that means for both animals and humans. Healthy bears mean a healthy world.
Interstate highways, they remain the greatest barrier to grizzly migration. If grizzlies living in geographically isolated ecosystems are to reconnect, the science needed to do that is coming from a homegrown place at the Montana State University.
We try to reduce collisions with wildlife, specifically large species that are also a threat to our own safety. And we also try to provide habitat connectivity, provide them a safe passage from one side of the road to the other side of the road. Wildlife fences, they essentially have two functions. One is to keep wildlife off the road, and to guide them towards underpasses and overpasses. Are we crazy to build these things? Well, if you look at the economics, we're not crazy. It is defensible, but they cost money. And some people say it costs too much money. But if you say that, then you make the assumption that there is no cost. Well, when we hit animals, we have vehicle repair costs. There's a certain probability that there will be human injuries and human fatalities. So we know for sure that there is a cost. If we build fences over long road sections, at least 3 miles, then we reduce collisions with large mammals 80 to 100%. So quite effective. We had about 22,000 successful crossings by wild mammal species, medium-sized and large-sized mammal species, every year. And in the 5 years we monitored, there was over 100,000 successful crossings. It's not just about providing a crossing structure at this road section. It is about this crossing structure is at this location because further that way is another road that is mitigated in the same context, providing connectivity between a core area even further away. You do it in a much more coordinated level, on a landscape level, in this case even a national level. It is a choice that you have to make. Others have done it. There's no reason we cannot do it here other than, do we want it? That is the question. Do we want it?
I think Americans have evolved to the point where we hate wild things. We hate wild rivers, we want to dam them up. And we hate, wild animals like grizzlies and wolves and even bison. With our fish, we think that we don't need wild rivers, that we can just breed them in hatcheries and release them, and it's wrong. We need wild things, but we're afraid of them. So I think we have to get back to local thinking, because I think in the end you protect what you love. We're concerned with maybe protecting a little creek next to our town, and that's about the extent of what we can do, and we've got to get back to that kind of thinking. If all of us worldwide thought about protecting our local areas, it would change things a lot. All these things can be solved with very few people who know what the problems are and to do something about it. If you really look into all the problems that we have with the natural world, you can get depressed. But the cure for depression is action. And I tell people, don't get depressed, get angry. Do something about it.
I am the Wildlife Program Manager for the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes. We are in charge of wildlife, all the wildlife species within the reservation, which is about a 1.3 million acre area. As a tribal member from this area, it's really unique to see how tied the tribes are to the natural environment and the natural resources. So when you have a bear using the landscape and they come across unprotected garbages or livestock and chicken coops in those areas, they can't differentiate between a natural food source and an unnatural food source. When we respond to a call, we'll initially work with the landowners to really take a thorough walkthrough of their area and identify all the potential attractants that they have on their landscape, whether it's a fruit tree or unsecured chicken coops or if it's garbage. And so we'll really just work with them to help remediate that attractant and then remove it as, just a source available to the animal. Our wildlife program, does so much to help prevent conflicts, because we do really want to see grizzly bears and other carnivores persist on the landscape. It's really working with landowners, working with ranchers and farmers to use tools and practices to help get around and ahead of some of that conflict, to help kill the conflict and not the carnivore.
Jackson Hole, Wyoming is responding to the perilous time of year known as hyperphagia, when bears need to fatten up before winter denning. Abrupt climate change is forcing bears to forego denning in search of the reward of municipal garbage.
A flashback to last year, there was an unprecedented amount of grizzly conflict in town. We ended up having 6 grizzlies put down. Most of the community was pretty fed up with what was happening to our bears. So I put together a petition on change.org. It ended up blowing up. It got 75,000 signatures, basically asking the county to make bear-proof trash cans mandatory. We wanted to have a bunch of these cans on the street before the bears came down for the fall and started roaming and looking for unsecured attractants. Every single one of these trash cans that's out on the street is a conflict that we're avoiding, a potential conflict. We're actively trying to get boots on the ground people out to save bears. And so much of this program has been done by volunteer work of wildlife photographers, wildlife activists, conservationists, and just people who love animals. So it's been a beautiful thing to see the community step up to the plate and actually do the work that it takes to save these incredible bears.
Me as a human approaching this trash can, I'm gonna stick my left hand under here, and there's a lever, and you push it to the right, lift up, throw your trash in, drop back down, and then it locks in place.
Farmstead Cider started in 2016. We started picking trees, and we picked, 5 trees and made 30 gallons of cider. And then one of our friends worked for the county Teton Conservation District, and they're like, guys, you may have found the solution to this pretty consistent problem that the county is having. The idea was to harvest as many trees as we could. So we focused on just sweet trees, and we harvested 70 trees. And the county's like, whoa. Conservation was like, 70 trees? Like, how many trees do you estimate there are when we did our final presentation? And we're like, well, 500, 600 trees. It became clear that this was a pervasive issue in the county. I can walk around the town of Jackson and know where every single apple tree is, or at least think I know where every single apple tree is. This year has been a banner year for apples. And so I'm walking down the street, I'm like, I've never seen that apple tree before. I've never seen that apple tree before. What? We focus largely in these neighborhoods that are of the highest frequency of bear. So we talk to the bear biologist and be like, all right, where can we take the food away? So we went in there and just cleaned it out year after year. So the bears stopped coming there. If we can just do one little thing by saving bears by drinking cider, when we don't see on the front page of the newspaper that a bear of this was euthanized or this was killed. Last year with 399 cubs coming into town and just fully causing havoc, now people are interested in actually doing something about it. If we figure out a way to make it so it's sustainable, other communities can do this too. Like, this has to be a community-wide effort. And we're getting closer to that as time goes on. It's like, as all things, perfection is never achieved, it's only sought.
She was born in a den near Pilgrim Creek inside Grand Teton National Park in the winter of 1996. Her name, 399, was given to her by bear researchers. Because of the images captured by Tom Mengelson over 16 years, 399 and her cubs have become an inspiration to millions of us worldwide.
I've seen literally thousands of bears, grizzly bears in my lifetime, counting ones in Alaska and Canada, and here. And there's no bear like 399 that I've ever seen or witnessed. I live here, she lives here basically, in my backyard, so to speak. For sure, 399 is the chillest grizzly I've ever seen. It's always remarkable that she's able to go through this landscape of park and millions of tourists going to Yellowstone and being here and surviving. She's magical. And she's taught her cubs to be magical too. For some reason, she started going south, and there's a lot of berries down there, and she was hanging out around, suburbs and housing areas, and she got into some bird feeders and beehives. So more and more concern came around, and the Fish and Wildlife decided that they should trap and collar 399 and her cubs. then they would have a way to follow them by GPS and see where they were, and if they got into trouble or something, maybe circumvent an issue. I'm not big on trapping at all, and collaring and tagging. It's just, so redundant and so painful for the bears and so risky for bears that might get killed and displaced. And it was all kind of underground. When I heard about it, I drove down there quickly, and the operation was just over. But there were probably 20 official cars from the different agencies, so it was kind of like a SWAT team. But they had 5 traps set up. When she stood on the hill for a little while, sat on the hill, waiting for the cubs to catch up. She didn't realize that they were in a trap, in a covert trap. That's pretty sad, but apparently she sat on the hill waiting for them to catch up, and then she went over the hill, and she kept going. Those 3 cubs would be probably lost one way or another. It'd be in a zoo, or nothing really to do with them. You can't really release them. So that really pissed me off, that they had botched the fucking trapping, basically. And I'm glad 399 didn't get caught. She's been trapped so many times. But we have to instill in people that if you really want animals like bears and wolves around, we need to coexist. We need to tell others that this is important. Nature heals all of us.
What have we lost? If we can only imagine a grizzly bear instead of know it's there, we have lost so much, because we have lost the very thing, the very spirit that allows us to be in this place. And it is okay to have that fear of an apex predator, of something bigger and greater than us, to create humility, to make us humble. Because I believe that all of the right words and the right inspiration come from that place of openness, of vulnerability and humility. And I think the bear, for me, teaches that over and over again. I think that the biggest lesson that we can learn is reciprocity with any creature. The bear does things within the ecosystem that help an ecosystem flourish. What are we doing? What are we doing to help this ecosystem flourish? What are we doing that doesn't kill it? It's like we're standing on the edge of a branch and we're sawing it off the tree, and pretty soon we're going to have nothing left to hold on to. What do we learn from nature? That it can give back as much as it takes. We have to be in this place where we're giving back now. We've taken all we can from the West, and it's starting to die.
What do we do, Dougie? Just 2 old Montana boys. What do we do to convince the people around us that bison and grizzlies should coexist with us?
I think you share your own life and your own love of the animals and your experiences with them to show how vital they are to everyday life. This is what I absolutely believe, that due to climate change, our chances of survival in the grizzly bears are exactly the same. Right now, extinction should be on everybody's slate, and I know people don't want to chew on that, but that's exactly the state of the world now. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for every piece of wild, natural habitat, which has inspired my entire life, is, chasing and trying to preserve wild places and wild animals.
If the great bear is to survive, we need to find human tolerance in our western wildlands. The lives of grizzlies are in the crosshairs in the states where they are still hanging on. We need to find the courage to defend our public lands and wildlife, the courage to fight for what we love in the natural world, beginning in our own backyard.
Thank you all for being here tonight and for taking the time to watch the film. We hope it moved and inspired you, and most of all, we hope it reminded you that the future of the grizzly is still being written. This film will be available on Facebook and YouTube tomorrow for you to share with family and friends, and you can learn more, get involved, and support Save the Yellowstone Grizzly at savethegrizz.org. I want to get to some questions, and I'm bringing on Micah Middleton, who's our director. Please welcome Micah. There she is. Filmmaker and founder of Never Give Up Films. Micah has worked with some of the world's leading storytellers, including National Geographic, Smithsonian, BBC, Netflix, and how about Save the Yellowstone Grizzly? She is the director behind the companion film, The Beast of Our Time, Climate Change and Grizzly Bears, and Return of the Grizzly, films that bring a powerful and deeply human lens to wildlife, climate change, and the future of grizzly bears in the lower 48. Let's take a look at some of these questions, huh, Micah?
Absolutely.
Do you want to go ahead and take one? I've been hogging the screen. When it was Micah's idea, she came to me one day and said, "We're going to make a film called Return of the Grizzly," and I said, "Okay." So it was her inspiration. So I thank you, Micah.
Well, it's been a pleasure working with Save the Yellowstone Grizzly. And thank you everybody for watching.
Yes, so much. Here's a question. What can I do to help grizzly bears? What are the most important actions people can take? Do you want to take a shot at that one?
Sure. So as the film is a couple of years old, but as we are all seeing our changing world, and the things, everything feels like it is under attack at the moment. They are trying to rewrite the Endangered Species Act, which would have not only an impact on grizzly bears, but also on a variety of other animals
in public lands.
And exactly, public lands. It's all you have to do is look in your backyard to see that things that in the past we have taken for granted, things that we love and rely on for just clean air and peace.
Right. It's really, that's why the grizzly is called the umbrella species, right? Because where the grizzly walks, it protects so many other things. And I think a lot of people realize that. People that come out to see public lands, people that come to Montana, people that come to the Northern Rockies. I think they immediately fall in love with the place and they get it. And what you can do to help bears is, I think at home when you're driving halfway across the country to come to Yellowstone, think about who you could contact, your local congressperson and say, we want the Endangered Species Act to work. It's been working for 50 years. Let's not, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's leave it alone and let's do what we can to make sure that these bears thrive. They've just barely made it back after 50 years. So we can't go taking the Endangered Species Act apart when true recovery is really not within their reach. Okay, let's see. Does that sound good to you, Micah? Here's one. How do you hope this film influences public opinion on policy around grizzly bears?
I think we've talked about that a little bit, but I am very lucky because I have grizzly bears in my backyard. So I am able to see them, protect them, and care for them. But you just have to look in your own backyard to see what you can protect. And it can be as small as planting some flowers to help protect bees, who, as Dan mentioned, are then also part of that umbrella species, right? It's the bears on top, or the whale, or the the black bear, the brown bear, the mountain lion, fox,
Us
whatever
too.
it is. But yeah, protect what's in your backyard and
Right.
and
Yeah, because if people come out and to see the sort of the last best place and all that, they just need to know that it's a precarious situation. I mean, climate change, people falling in love with the place, coming from all over the world. It makes an impression, certainly for the good, but it also is potentially really harmful to the land. And we just have to just do whatever we possibly can. So contact your Congress, write letters, sign petitions. There's any number of those online you can get to. We have one. But the policy is really in flux, and it's a dangerous time. So we have to remind our leaders that the public lands are they belong to everybody, and the animals need them just as desperately, if not more, than we do. So policy is important. Get after your congressperson, write letters, pay attention. Okay, another one.
we have one that asks what happened to 399.
Oh, well, yeah. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so 399 got hit by a car 2 years ago.
Please tell everybody, in case they don't know who she was.
So
You know.
399 was a 25-year-old bear that Tom Mangelson, and he talked about it in the film, basically spent his career filming and saw her as she had several series of cubs, and the cubs went on to have more cubs, and he was able to see her evolve as a mother, but also as a grizzly ambassador. And yeah, she was an incredibly special bear, and at the end she had her second to last litter. She had four cubs, which is not unusual, but it is very rare. So her last set of cubs, she had two, and she got hit by a driver south of Jackson who just didn't see her. They weren't going fast. There wasn't any, they weren't intoxicated, but they just didn't see her. And as we also mentioned in the film, right, the importance of overpasses and underpasses, not only to save our local wildlife, but to save the people traveling on our roads.
The numbers are staggering, and
Yeah.
and so 399 has become one of those numbers. It's some huge number. It's like 1 million animals a year are hit and killed on the highways across the country, and there's so much that could be done. There's rules in place, and I know Montana's moving to do that. All the states are moving to do that, but I just hope their funding doesn't get cut, because the cost of it, as Marcel talked about in the film, the cost of, they do cost analysis on these things, and then that is also staggering. And the cost, you could get killed yourself, hitting an animal. I see one here from Kate, who said, Mary would like to know if there are plans to reintroduce grizzlies to the Olympics. I don't know about reintroduction in the Olympics in Washington State, but I know in the current proposed rule, the entire state of Washington is included in not just in reintroduction, but into natural colonization, where the bears could over time move back into their original habitat. So, Kate, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that is what's on the table right now. Whether or not the Fish and Wildlife Service is going to enforce that, I can't tell you. But it's definitely, in the cards, and let's hope that it happens. And that's another reason to sort of to push for policy. Because if you don't do that, if people in the Olympics or people don't in Western Washington don't, then it may not happen.
And that has been amazing to see that over the last 20, 30 years, it has taken time, but the bears are slowly moving out of Yellowstone and Glacier, and there is those very, very few explorer bears that are, you know, dipping their toes outside to see what other habitat is out there for them. And there is a few that are making it.
They're so brave and tolerant. I mean, just last fall, a grizzly came through Livingston and hardly anyone saw it. And it went through town or on the edge of town and followed the Yellowstone River, went under I-90, and then just kept going. So it does happen, and they're smart enough. They're very wary of the big roads, but they will cross them. So we have to encourage that and as best we can, because that's like what Bill Payne talked about, the tolerance of letting them pass through, you know, our where we live.
Yeah,
if
we can be good neighbors by, you know, picking our apples, like Farmstead Cider mentioned, and by, you know, getting bear-proof garbage cans, and depending on where you are, there is several organizations where they are available to purchase, or depending on the situation, you might even be given them. And keeping your livestock behind wired fencing, and yeah, it is possible.
Common sense, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of that is, and people know, and but the bears are also so tolerant. They don't want to tangle with us. They'd much rather be on their way. And so if we can encourage that, and that's part of what we wanted to do with this film, and I think and with both films, is to encourage that. I don't know if there's one more question maybe here, Chuck, do you think? Let's see. There was a bear from the Northern Continental Divide moved into Yellowstone, and it has a cub. Was it in the news? I'm just not sure. There's going to be so much of that, of the explorer bears moving in, because that's how they evolved. So that's another reason why we have to have tolerance, and along with the connectivity. And also there's the, Chuck calls it the myth of ferocity, where they're, you know, certainly they're big, scary animals, but the plains people and co-evolved, coexisted with them for thousands of years. So, you know, there's certainly a way to do that. And it just takes a little, like we say, tolerance, and the bears will move through, and if they don't, then that'll create all kinds of genetic problems that are well known.
And our world is better because of them. Our world is better because of the
It sure is. It sure is.
Yeah, like that song, right? Like if you pave over everything, it's just we need that diversity.
Okay, do we have time for one more maybe? Oh gee, it says, what does success look like with your lawsuit? Well, we were able to put off the delisting for a couple of years, so that I think it helped considerably, and also we more or less forced the Fish and Wildlife Service to take a much harder look at what the bears needed, you know, which was a lot of big country, so they can sustain themselves. And if we can keep that one going, then our lawsuit will be successful. It's been two or 3 years now. We have to wait another several months to find out what's going to happen with the rules. But we'll be patient, and we'll also be ready to defend our settlement if we have to. Okay, I think that might do it because we're right about in an hour. If that's okay with all of you. Is that okay, Chuck? Okay. I'm sorry we didn't get to more questions, but I thank everyone once again. Thank you, Micah. And all I can say is everyone, just think about those bears. They need your help. Talk them up. Talk to as many people as you can, and maybe it'll be the thing that makes and breaks it for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.